I'm going to keep this one short. And normally, whenever I say that, it absolutely goes completely long, but we have date night. And no, we're not going to go see Fire and Ash. But what we are talking about is James Cameron on the precipice of Fire and Ash coming out. Yes, we will eventually see that. I know that, and we'll have our reviews for it. At least we'll have a lot of things to say whenever it comes to it. But James Cameron also has a lot of things to say when it comes to how much this actually produces. Before we go into this, before we make a little bit of fun of some, and also go into other things, if you like anything you see here on this channel, please hit the subscribe button while I mush mouth over this entire presentation. We would greatly appreciate it. So let's start out with the first thing. Reading this article, it's a James Cameron interview. And yes, I am not starting at the beginning because that is my fault. He says that he is ready to move on beyond Avatar. I've got other stories to tell. Now, this entire article is literally just a narrative with things that he has experienced in the past. And then the Hollywood Reporter, that person who wrote this article, let's go ahead and look at it. Come on, let's go ahead and do this. If we're going to do it this way, James Hibbard, Hibberty Dibberty, is basically the way that they always do things. We're going to keep all of this in. Do not worry, because we keep things authentic here. It starts out with an interview. It was a little spooky for a while, and that's whenever his submersible down on the Titanic went out of power for about 30 minutes. And during those tense things, he's basically just building up a narrative for himself that he always tries to find a solution to the project. What kind of project can he do in the future? What is the solution to the problem right here? Well, his solution was making Avatar. Maybe not another Terminator, maybe not anything else, but just an Avatar. And it just keeps going down and down and down. So what we're actually not going to do is keep on this and try to keep it a little bit more succinct. So let's go to that part place, because they have a good way of kind of like condensing things, and we can actually see what is actually going on rather than just a bunch of word salad. Is James Cameron leaving Avatar? Because that's what that entire interview boils down to. Director again, because this is not the first time, signals possible exit as Fire and Ash faces franchise crossroads. Now, what he exactly means by this is that if it doesn't make money, if it is a clear sign of diminishing returns, then he will not return for 4 and 5, even though 4 and 5 are planned. No, nobody's angry here today. We're just going to see what he has to talk about, see what he has to say, because there are diminishing returns between the first Avatar, even though it was released twice to multi-billion dollar re-release. This is why that movie made so much money. They did a re-release with the second one, which was actually good in these times post-COVID, but diminishing returns, still over 2 billion worldwide. I'm sure that he is expecting that again with Fire and Ash. However, if it doesn't happen, because it is mostly carried by the foreign markets, he's willing to go over and do something else. He's got so much stuff on the brain. James Cameron is once again openly questioning how much longer he wants to remain tethered to Avatar before leaving the franchise. And this time, the financial stakes surrounding Ash and Fire may finally force the issue. Now, here's the thing, and I'm just going to say it for myself. I have seen both Avatar movies. I have plans to see Fire and Ash. However, do I care, and can I remember very much about any of them other than the spectacle? I believe whenever I did a review of The Way of Water, I said it was an absolutely beautiful 3-hour screensaver. And that's all I could really pull away from that film. In a wide-ranging interview with The Hollywood Reporter, which is what I just pulled up, but we're not going to go through all that. That's why I want to keep this more succinct. Cameron repeatedly frames Fire and Ash as a decisive moment, not just for the franchise's future, but for his own creative direction. Because with the film, it's going to have a strong domestic opening, especially because they're putting Marvel's Doomsday and Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. They're putting exclusive trailers and exclusive prologue into that, but you have to get a ticket to Fire and Ash. I don't know if it's specifically in IMAX, but it should be for the IMAX ones. So that's another reason why the opening budget, not the opening budget, but the opening debut first weekend is going to absolutely hit the rafters. But what it does with the carryover, that's something that's completely different. While the film is tracking for a strong domestic opening by most industry standards, the numbers point towards an uncomfortable reality. is that it's going to be the lowest grossing Avatar film to date because, like I said before, just the normal viewer, even a movie reviewer or anything like that, we're seeing it only because we need to talk about it, only because other people want to see it. And especially with movie prices going up, movie tickets, popcorn sales, and all that kind of stuff going down, people still want to know, is it worth their money? Cameron acknowledges the Fire and Ash arrives with structural challenges that earlier entries did not face. The film's 3-hour and 15-minute long runtime, which is great for a nap if you're bringing your girl along with you and you actually care about film, limits the number of daily screenings theaters can offer, a long-standing concern in the exhibition business. However, that did not stop Oppenheimer from reaching over $1 billion, even with the Barbieheimer thing, or Barbenheimer, however they called that, because Christopher Nolan's movies tend to run extremely long as well. So I know that there is that aspect where, longer run times, less screenings. However, the screenings themselves need to cost more per ticket. Don't worry, those tickets will sell out, at least in the first 2 weeks. Where the hold comes in, that's the real question. That is the real crux of the matter. There's a wisdom that's a carryover from decades ago that if we can have more screens per day, we'll make more money, Cameron said. But if you engage the people, the word will spread. We proved it with Titanic, which is exactly the same length as Fire and Ash. He's got a point there. He has a point to an extent. However, Avatar is not really engaging with people. It's only engaging to their eyeballs. And most people's eyeballs are linked to their Instagram accounts and their TikToks. So he may not be entirely on point, but he does have at least a little bit of a stepping off point, at least in arguing this thing. Still, he's careful not to overstate the expectations. This doesn't mean that Fire and Ash will make as much money as Titanic, although it probably will, if not more. Not adjusted for inflation. Of course it will. That admission is noticeable. Titanic remains one of the highest grossing films in history, but Cameron's willingness to lower the comparative bar demonstrates how different the current box office environment has become and how precarious the math is for films of this scale, especially because they filmed all three of them at once. And so the production budget is absolutely ballooned, exploded, and bubblegum popped all over your fucking face. Now, the return on investment is really what he's looking at. The ROI. That's what he's really looking for. And if it makes sense to him that, like, hey, we're going to get out while we're ahead, then he can move on to other things. He doesn't have to finish 4 and 5 because basically just dances with wolves under different circumstances, different scenarios, and different weather patterns. That's basically all that these things are. Exactly how much money Fire and Ash earns will determine whether the franchise continues as originally envisioned. Cameron says his plan to conclude the series with 2 additional films, some of which have already been partially shot, but not fully. And we know, well, we're used to now 3 years in between each installment, because so much goes into the graphical design of it. So much goes into the CGI and all the things that they are pioneering. We understand that, but however, the core of the story is what has to hit with people. And that is what is simply not hitting with people. Because a lot of people can't tell you who the main characters are. Everyone knows Jake Sully. And the other person is Zoe Saldana. Oh, wait, that's the actress's name. That's not the actual character's name. All of them are part of one big story. I doubt it. A tragedy for the franchise to halt. But that was Weaver. That wasn't even James Cameron saying it. He doesn't present the continuation as a foregone conclusion. This can be the last one. There is only one unanswered question in the story, and that is, when is the sergeant going to either be redeemed or die? We may find that the release of Avatar 3 proves how diminished the cinematic experience is these days. I disagree with that. Cinematic experience is right for certain movies, and this is one of those movies where the cinematic experience actually does matter. Or we may find it proves the case that it's as strong as it ever was, but only for certain types of films. Okay, well, I stuck my foot in my mouth by saying exactly what his quote was. It's a coin toss right now. We won't know until the middle of January. And the middle of January, here's the thing also. Maybe some people are not seeing this, and maybe it's just a minute point of all of this, is with the ticket prices, with the extra cost of IMAX, with the extra cost of going out during the Christmas season. A lot of people are spending all of their hard-earned bucks on gifts for other people, and the people with the disposable income and or getting paid to go watch these films are the ones that are going to go be watching it. Now, don't get me wrong, these theaters are going to be completely packed to the rim for the first two. It's the hold, and that's what he's saying. We won't know until the middle of January, when people are trying to wait for their next paychecks to make up for all the debt that they incurred while trying to get little Timmy, his new, what are kids like nowadays? I don't even freaking know. Hopefully it's GI Joe's, Transformers, Pokemon, and Power Rangers. The phrasing is blunt. Cameron is openly acknowledging that Fire and Ash could function as a de facto ending, not because the story is finished, but as Chris Gore, and God love him, he can't help from spoilers, but he has said that it ends where it begins. Now, I haven't seen anything. He hasn't given me like exact spoilers or anything like that. But if Chris is right, and I believe he is right, and James Cameron is basically saying the same thing in this interview, this could be a de facto ending if it needs to be, almost like the last episode of season 4 of Futurama. The devil's hands are idle playthings. They meant for that to be, this will be the culmination of the series. And if they get renewed, that's fine. But if they don't, this is a great way to culminate the story. James Cameron seems to at least be 2 steps ahead whenever it comes to that. He knows that. He has already made peace with it. And so we need to make peace with that ourselves. If you guys have anything to say, leave it down in the comment section below. There's a whole lot to talk about whenever it comes to this. There will be a whole lot more once the film drops, which I believe is tomorrow. This is Malty from Mouth of Malty. We love you. We appreciate you. And we'll see you later. Bye.